Hello everybody, welcome back. Today I'll be introducing you to how to find the domain of a function, but this is part 1 because otherwise this video will be super long. So be ready for part 2. But back to the business, so let's jump right in. So let's say you're given a simple function, f of x equals the polynomial 4x squared plus 3x minus 3. Now in any sort of simple polynomial like this, the domain will be anything from negative infinity to positive infinity. And we can use interval notation to write this. Let me give you one more example. Let's say g of x equals 8x raised to the 5th power minus 3x cubed minus 4x plus 5. And let's say we're trying to find the domain. Well, it's still negative infinity to positive infinity. Because any simple polynomial like this, its domain is always any number between negative infinity and positive infinity. Now what if we have a function like f of x equals 8 divided by 3 plus x? Well, we have to set this not equal to 0, which means that x cannot equal negative 3. Because 3 plus negative 3 equals 0. And anything divided by 0, but in this case 8 divided by 0, is undefined. Is undefined. So if we're using interval notation, we'll write that the domain is negative infinity, comma, negative 3, union, negative 3, comma, infinity. So this is our domain. So let's say we're given the function f of x equals x minus 3x squared divided by x squared minus 8x plus 16. Well, this cannot equal 0. Which means that we need to know the domain so that if we try to input a number, we don't input the wrong number. So to find the domain, we need to find two numbers that multiply to 16 and add up to negative 8. So let's just try to find the square root of 16 just to start with some of the factors of 16. And we have positive and negative 4. So let's try positive 4. 4 plus 4 equals 8, and we aren't looking for positive 8, we're looking for negative 8, so let's try negative 4. Negative 4 plus negative 4 equals negative 8, so negative 4 will work, so that means that we have x minus 4 times x minus 4 cannot equal 0. Not equal 0, which means that x minus 4 cannot equal 0, and the other x minus 4 cannot equal 0. So now, if we try to get x alone, we can add 4 to both sides. So that means x cannot equal 4, x cannot equal 4, which means that if we were to write this in the domain in interval notation, we'd write negative infinity to 4 union 4 to infinity, and this right here is our domain. Alright, so let's say we have a function like f of x equals the square root of x minus 8. Well, x minus 8 has to be greater than or equal to 0. And to get x all by itself, we just have to add 8 to both sides, which means that x has to be greater than or equal to 8, which means that if we were to write this as the domain, we'd write it like this, and we'll use a bracket because we're including 8. We write 8 to infinity. And this right here is our domain. Now, what if we have a fraction with the square root on as the denominator? Well, we have to set the inside, so x minus 8. X minus 8 has to be greater than 0, because if it is 0, well, the square root of 0 is 0, and we can't have 0 as a denominator. And if it was less than 0, well, we can't take a square root, the square root of a negative number, so it has to be greater than 0. And now we have to solve for x, or get x all by itself, which means that x has to be greater than 8. Which means that if we were to write this with interval notation, we'd write it like this. And this right here is our domain. Alright, so let's say we have the function f of x equals the square root of x squared minus 6x plus 8. Well, we have to this has to be equal to or greater than 0, because we cannot take the square root of a negative number, unfortunately. So first step is to find two numbers that multiply to 8 and add to negative 6. So why don't we start with 4 and 2. 4 and 2 both multiply to 8, and when you add them together, we get 6, which is not what we're looking for. We'll just write an X, I guess. Symbolize that this one we're not going to use. Now what about negative 4 and negative 2? Those both multiply to 8, and when you add them, you get negative 6. This is what we're looking for. So now we can write this as x minus 4 times x minus 2. And remember, we're still trying to find the square root, but we're not going to focus on that for now. So whenever I'm talking about something, assume I'm talking about what's right here. Alright, so let me just erase what's over here so you don't have to pay attention to it anymore, so we get more space. Alright, and this right here has to be greater than or equal to 0, as we already know, which means that x minus 4 has to be greater than or equal to 0, and x minus 2 has to be greater than or equal to 0. And we know for a fact that x can equal 4, and we know for a fact that x can equal 2. So let's try inputting a number that is more than 4. So let's try 5. Well, 5 minus 4 is 1, and 5 minus 2 is 3. So now we have 1 times 3, which gives us 3. So now we have 3, which is a positive number, which means that when we input 5 into x, we're gonna get an output, which is a positive number. And let's try something between 2 and 4. Let's try 3. Well, 3 minus 4 equals negative 1, and 3 minus 2 equals 1, and negative 1 times 1 equals negative 1. But if you remember we have a square root sign, you'll know that we can't take the square root of a negative number, so we aren't going to be including any numbers between 4 and 2. Now what about a number below 2? Let's try negative 4. Negative 4 minus 4 equals negative 8. And now negative 4 minus 2 equals negative 6. And negative 8 times negative 6 equals positive 48. So we get a positive result whenever we have a number to use as x that is below 2. So if it's below 2, we get a positive number. And if it's above 4, we get a positive number. And if it's between them, it's negative, but we're not going to be including that because the square root of a negative number isn't defined, except let's try 2. Well, 2 minus 4 equals negative 2. 2 minus 2 equals 0. 2 times 0 equals 0. Can take the square root of 0, so we can include 2. And now what about 4? 4 minus 4 is equals 0, and anything times 0 equals 0. So we can include 4 as well. So let me just erase this mess over here. Alright, time to write the domain. So we can write it like this. As we're going, and because we're including 2, we can just write 2, and then we can use a bracket, union, and then we're going including 4, so we're going to use a bracket again. So now we have 4 to infinity. And this right here is our domain. So let's say you're asked to find the domain of a function like f of x equals the square root of 4x plus 4 divided by x minus 3. Well, to start, we know that the denominator cannot equal 0 because anything divided by 0 is undefined. So we can set x minus 3 cannot equal 0. And now to find out what x cannot equal, we'll just add 3 to both sides. So x cannot equal 3. Alright, so I'll just put that in a box for you so that we can come back to it later. Now what about in the numerator? Well, this right here has to be greater than 0 or equal to 0 because we can't find the square root of a negative number. Alright, so now it's time to try to get x by itself. So we can start by subtracting 4 from both sides. So minus 4 and plus 4 cancel each other out. So now we have 4x can equal or be greater than negative 4. And now we want to divide both sides by 4. So divided by 4, divided by 4 and divided by 4. And this one, they cancel each other out. So now we're left with x can equal or be greater than negative 1. So now it's time to write the domain. We can write the domain like this. So we're going to start, because x can equal negative 1, because it can, it could be more, but because it can equal, we're going to use this bracket right here. Right from negative 1 to 3. We're going to use a parentheses because x cannot equal 3. And then we're going to write union. And then we're going to write 3 to infinity. And this right here is the domain. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel and hit that notification bell. If you disliked this video, please share it with somebody else because they might find it helpful. But for now, goodbye.